Hello and welcome to Tools Are Tools. I'm your host, Andrew Palmer. Tools Are Tools podcast is powered by Elegant Marketplace, the premier independent WordPress marketplace. I'd like to welcome you to today's guest from Publish Press, Steve Burge. Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks, Andrew.
Good to make your acquaintance once again, and a fellow Englishman, not far from where I was brought up either, on the south coast of the UK. Now, Publish Press, I use it actually, the free version on Elegant Marketplace, so that's a good start.
Awesome.
Take us through your history. You know, how come you're living in the States, what you're doing in WordPress, and how long you've been doing it.
I've been involved in open source for much longer than I care to admit. Probably since 2003, 2004 or so. And I've seen a thing or two in those years. We were around when the very first pieces of the GPL and the commercial licenses were being put in place. Had some of the legal arguments about how you can sell themes and plugins even though the code is open source. This was 2006, 2007. But for some reason, it took me a long time to come around to WordPress. And it's only been in the last 3 or 4 years that we've decided to tackle the WordPress market.
Yeah, well, that's a good move. If I can interrupt you there, because you were Joomla, weren't you? I started out on Joomla as well, so I'm pretty new to WordPress, only 8 years in. So what made you make that decision?
Well, we did a lot of Joomla and probably still make about 50% of our revenue from Joomla. And also we were heavily into Drupal as well. And one thing we found is that some of these products/projects are so big and so popular that even if their heyday has gone, you can still make a good amount of money from them. I know people making good money in the Joomla market still, and people making excellent money in the Drupal market as well, even though both of those are probably 5, 6, 7 years past their peak.
Well, I was looking the other day actually on Joomla, how many Joomla downloads there have been. I don't think you can ignore it. There's 112 million times it's been downloaded. So there's I think there's still a market there, to be honest. You know, there's a few,
for sure.
There's a few themes and a few plugins that, have got less than 10,000 or 3,000, and these guys are still managing to support them and update them and actually make some money from support and going around the GPL. That's the difficult area, isn't it? Because, the plugins are essentially free, and what you're paying for in the premium versions is a few add-ons which you need extra support for. So that's always been a difficult area for WordPress plugins as well. So what's the way forward with Publish Press as far as WordPress is concerned? Because we're aiming at the WordPress community currently, but I'm keen certainly to talk about Joomla a little later on.
So we were heavily involved in Drupal for a good number of years and ended up working with some big publishers and big organizations. And we started to get curious. Why would they use Drupal as opposed to WordPress? And a lot of them told us that what they really wanted was approval processes for the content they were publishing on their sites. They needed to have a writer who would then pass the content on to an editor, who would then pass the content on to legal approval. And that wasn't possible as far as they had seen in WordPress. And for many of them, that was the reason they chose Drupal. And I'm not the smartest guy, but something in my head rang a little bell and said, if you could do that in WordPress, you'd have a really popular product. And so basically that's what we're trying to bring to the WordPress space, is that approval process.
Well, I think that's very important. When I was building intranets many, many moons ago, we had multiple authors and things like that. And we were using actually Joomla for that to build a couple of intranets. And Joomla allowed multiple authors on one post. And I know that Publish Press Authors does that. And then also, to write comments within the blog post. You want an editor, you want another author to read those editors' comments. And you're right, WordPress didn't have that capability. But with Publish Press, you've got pretty much everything now.
Yeah, we've a suite of 6 plugins that try and tackle a whole bunch of little gaps in the editorial process for these bigger organizations. And we get a kick out of seeing some of the organizations, some of the names that come through the Publish Press checkout, and it's fun to see some of the bigger names using WordPress and like, oh, hey, I know that company. It's good to see some of these bigger organizations, bigger government agencies adopting WordPress, and that's very much the space that we have positioned Publish Press in. We see a lot of the WordPress community talking about Squarespace, talking about Wix and Weebly, and there's probably going to be some attrition at the lower end of the market. So the bet we're placing on WordPress is that the enterprise, the bigger publishers will start to increasingly move to WordPress as things like Drupal and Joomla and maybe even platforms like Adobe become less popular, that WordPress is going to make a lot of inroads in the enterprise.
I think they are. I think you're right. I mean, you've got the thing about what I like about Publish Press is I just use the free version as I alluded to earlier, but it's absolutely brilliant to apply an author to it. It's brilliant to be able to schedule it, putting it into pending, into review. I get a notification. I use multiple authors on Elegant Marketplace. And I think if anyone's thinking of starting a blog and asking other people to contribute, I think Publish Press is really a no-brainer, isn't it? Even the free version. But once you actually have a little deep dive into what Publish Press can do with authors, with capabilities, with checklists and permissions and revisions, the premium version has got to be your go-to if you're looking to, especially now in our current climate. We're at 7th of April in 2020. I think people are going to remember what's been going on this last few months, and I think people are going to be building blogs and want multiple authors. And we've got multiple vendors, for instance, on Elegant Marketplace, and we've got multiple authors on the website as well. And that gives me an advantage because I know that I can go out to the market and say, come on, guys, I want somebody to write a bit of copy. But I also don't want you to have full access to the website. I need to be able to edit it, or I need to be able to comment within that post. And it actually speeds up the writing process and the publishing process. And that's the most important thing in WordPress at the moment, is getting your information written, edited, and published in a timely manner. And I think that's where Publish Press can help. Do you reckon that's the case?
Yeah, that's the bet we're making. We're tackling things that are really, I think, known problems in the WordPress space. And in the Gutenberg project, we are pretty much running smack bang into phase 3 of Gutenberg. At the moment, they're doing phase 2, which is the full site editing and moving blocks into the templates, into the theme portion of WordPress. And phase 3 is going to be focused almost entirely on this editing process, on approval processes, and maybe some really interesting things such as Google Drive style comments. Yeah. So you can select a little bit of text and add a comment directly to that. And I think it's a kind of a validation of what we're doing, that Matt Mullenweg and his team know this kind of stuff is a big missing piece in WordPress. And we're confident enough that all the focus that will come on this area when it comes to phase 3 of Gutenberg will be good for us, that we'll be able to adapt our products and keep filling in the missing pieces that WordPress is lacking.
So I go to Publish Press on WordPress.org and I download it, or I go to your website, publishpress.com. Well done for that URL, by the way. And I download the plugin, I trial it and everything. What's the upgrade path?
We try and make it as simple as possible. I've done a couple of podcasts lately where I've just talked about my mistakes that I've made in my career. And eventually they had to cut me off after like an hour and a half of talking about all the ways I've messed up in business and launching projects like this. And one of the major mistakes we made when we launched Publish Press was to sell each product individually. And we ended up with half a dozen products, and each one had their own different licensing system, and then there was an all-in-one bundle, and it got very complicated, and I didn't know easy digital downloads too well, and it's not the simplest product to use. And there came a point last year when we basically said, this is way too complicated. We are just going to sell everything in a bundle, and we're not even going to grade the bundles too much. The simplest bundle, you can use everything on one site. The next bundle, you can use everything on 5 sites. And the biggest bundle, you can use everything on unlimited sites.
Perfect. I feel your pain, being a bit, we started 5 years ago and we started using WooCommerce licensing, and now, we transferred over to EDD, which wasn't easy, but it kind of works. It's 99% there, and there's a few licensing issues that you have, or curl issues, security, etc. But generally it does work. But also talking about the bundles, it's so difficult to get it right because so many different people want different things. We do promotions on various plugins. We say, okay, you got one user license, 5 user license, lifetime, whatever it may be, and it's really hard to keep everyone happy. That keeping some of the people happy most of the time is my main phrase that I go to, because you're just never going to be able to win. Is it free?
No.
What sort of support is it? What am I paying for, et cetera, et cetera. So, I feel your pain, definitely. I think that's the pain that most WordPress plugin developers have, or most plugin developers have. But it's working.
It is. I seem to remember reading something by the guys at Basecamp, Jason Fried, I think wrote this. Someone asked him why there's only one pricing plan at Basecamp. They don't try and gouge the enterprise customers for an enormous amount of money. He said that they do this just to keep everything incredibly simple. That if they are trying to do a sales process and do invoicing and do the follow-up billing for the enterprise customers, that's a whole extra set of headaches. Basically, the price is the same for everyone. You come in, you pay your money, and it has worked. We have very few questions or complaints about the sales process. It's very clear to everyone. It reduces our customer support. We don't have to go and do custom invoicing and chase them up. I think a straightforward bundling process has been good for us.
Good. What's the future, do you think?
Well, it is mid-April in 2020.
Yeah.
And I think, touch wood, the future is bright. We are trying to get ahead of Phase 3 and Gutenberg, and to build very much with that in mind. In terms of simply being in the open source and WordPress space, the people that I've talked to had a really bad few days when this coronavirus outbreak really first hit the public consciousness, maybe a month ago, I think, like March 8th, 9th, 10th. I think there was maybe a Sunday evening when the news started to break that the stock market would drop 35% the next day. Everyone woke up on Monday morning and was running around like their hair was on fire. And I heard quite a few people tell me that their sales, and ours did too, just stopped for a couple of days as everyone tried to figure out what was going on. But people seem to have bounced back, at least in our industry.
Certainly in the marketplace suffered, I think, for about 48 hours, to be honest.
Yes.
We had a real downturn. Still, people were buying. I was really surprised that anybody was buying, because people are trying to get over the shock of getting, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? How many customers are going to say to us that they can't pay? How's it affecting the brick and mortar businesses? How's it affecting the internet, the online guys? What are we going to do about getting stuff delivered? Our postmen, and UPS and DHL and any other FedEx, etc., are they going to be allowed to go out and work, etc., etc.? And I think once people settle down and people that can work from home are working from home, everybody realized that pubs, clubs, restaurants, etc. were closed, and we're settling down. It's taken, I think, 2 weeks, certainly in the UK since lockdown, for things to settle down. But I'm having some very positive conversations with people around developing their businesses, both online and offline, because I actually run a UK agency as well as Elegant Marketplace and a few other things. So I've got my ear to the ground, and I've had to help a few restaurants, reformat into being delivery only. So I get it. And the problem is with, like I said, I've been talking to people about blogging more, getting interest. And it's one of the reasons I wanted you on this podcast, to be honest, is to promote Publish Press. I've been using it for maybe a couple of years, and it really saves me a lot of time. And I guarantee we'll upgrade as well, because we're getting more and more authors on board. So here's my promise: we're going to buy the pro version. So there you go.
Thanks, Andrew.
because I love the free version, and until I did my research on this, I didn't particularly realize that there was so much in it. So you've got a customer in me for sure. I'm really pleased to have had this conversation with you. So,
thanks. It's been quite a journey. We just reached 100,000 users, free users on WordPress.org, and probably took us 3-4 years to get there. Went through, I think we brought and sold maybe 4 or 5 different plugin ideas, banging our head against the wall, and this is the one that's worked, and hopefully will continue to work despite everything that's going on in the outside world.
Well, I think it will. Right. So we're going to basically, I'm going to ask you now, where do people contact you? What your web address is, whether you're on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever, because I really do want people to know about this. So where can we find you?
So we are publishpress.com and publishpress.com on Twitter. Just take out the dot. And on Facebook too, at Publish Press, and YouTube. And you can catch me on Twitter at Steve J Burge, Burge.
Fantastic. Right. Well, I really appreciate your time today. So thank you for being here, because it's sometimes it's a bit, the time difference, UK and United States. So I appreciate you getting up a little bit early for that. And to the listeners, I'd like to thank you for listening. You can follow Elegant Marketplace on Twitter at elegantmktplace. And you can view the show notes at toolsourtools.com. And I'll see you next week.